Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. Tonight is February the 23rd. Hi all and welcome to the normal edition. I think the last show was anything but normal. Of the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. We'll have the usual mix of news. We've got some intel, some of it's rather interesting. And I'm going to cover some aspects of the show last Sunday. Called Humanity Unplugged. Now, it created quite a wave of emotions. A lot was put into it. It took me a long time to do it, over quite a few weeks, and I edited it and copied and pasted and moved bits here and added bits in there, and I was kind of pleased at the end of it, because I think it was time for an expansion of knowledge. It doesn't mean to say that that others aren't ready, because we all have different learning curves. Some people liked it, some people were neutral, and some people didn't, for various reasons, which I'm going to cover. I'm going to go in deeper on some of it, because Sunday was about presenting the information, and when new information comes forward, it always can lead to people going into reactionary mode over certain aspects of it, and that was expected. And then perhaps they listened to it again and they didn't interpret it the right way the first time, and then things become a bit clearer, or maybe they don't. It's all about what you absorb and what you are ready to learn and what you're ready to accept, and are you willing to go forward with it. The choice is always yours. I just present the information as I know it, and I have coalesced it into what was quite a considerable package last Sunday, and I think we were ready. I think I was kind of been edging to do another show of that type. It's been a long time since the faction show, 16 months. But that surprises most of you. Time flies. But like I said, I'll cover some of that later in the show, and we'll get into some news items of what's been going on. I don't know about you, but the news seems to be becoming less and less important than what it used to be. We were all waiting for certain things to be disclosed, and now it's getting disclosed left, right and centre, and some of it is what would have been important 12 months ago, and it would have been covered extensively, is now kind of being brushed over, because we're most that listen to this show are kind of at a higher level of learning, and so we're able to categorize of what's important and what's not. And this is why they've thrown bullshit at us like fake news. The irony of a fake news organisation even attempting to throw out fake news as a sideshow is not lost on us all. It's all about distract, and a lot of the posts now is all about distraction and trying to keep you off your path, because we are finding out what has really been going on here, and we're taking responsibility for it and moving forward with it. That terrifies the life out of them. It terrifies them, and they know we're coming, and we're coming fast. And we may have some more detailed evidence of that, some this week, but I'm hoping by next Thursday we might have something a bit more meaty. We'll see. Anyway, the CIA Director Mike Pompeo has flatly denied the report this week that the US intelligence community is withholding intelligence from the president. He might be convinced of that, but we're not. The CIA, he went on to say, the CIA does not and has not and will never hide intelligence from the president, period. Really. We are not aware of any incident that when that has occurred. I can think of about 30 off the top of my head, but there you go. And a Wall Street Journal report cited some incidents, and they responded and said that effect was completely wrong. It calls into question the integrity of thousands of professional intelligence officers by peddling gossip without citing a single example to support its claims. And he went on to say, citing current and former officials, the journal reported Thursday that intelligence officials were withholding sensitive intelligence from Mr. Trump because they were concerned it could be leaked or compromised. Both the White House and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence denied the allegations. Well, what I do know is there's a bit of a sweep going on within the intelligence community, and there's an awful lot of posturing, and you'll see an awful lot of blame culture being thrown around over the coming days and weeks as everyone starts to protect their own backs and throw each other under the bus. It will be fun, and we will get disclosure out of it. Where are we? Given the last news item about the CIA not disclosing certain things, here's another example. They've been caught meddling in the French elections of 2012, and there was an interview on RT where the Nikolai Merkovich said that the interference by the CIA into the French elections, you would have thought the French would have been a lot more cheesed off than the Russians were when they were accused of interfering in the last election here. Now, of course, America and Russia are not classed technically as allies, but the French and America are, and that's where this Russian guy who was interviewed on RT last Thursday questioned why the French hadn't raised more of a concern over it. It was WikiLeaks who released the classified documents on the CIA spying during the 2012 election in France and reportedly targeting the current and former French presidents. When asked, do these revelations surprise you? The response was, no, they don't. We've known for a long, long time US intelligence has been meddling in the affairs of foreign countries, even with foreign countries that are officially friends within the NATO or other international organisations, so this is no surprise at all. I think, if memory serves me correctly, I'd mentioned recently, I think, if memories serve me well, it was the CIA have been complicit in 61 elections, fiddling or interfering with it. So when they accuse Russia of interfering here, that to me is like the height of hypocrisy, because no organisation on this planet has interfered with elections more than the clowns in Langley. They've been caught, and they're going to get caught a lot of the other things they've been involved with also. But this is why I've been saying over the last few years about stop looking for foreign, from afar boogeymen, because a lot of the issues and the problems, both here and global, all stem out of that agency. We've covered that there's more than one. It's now split into three because of the infighting in the rogue part of CIA 2. You know, this is in essence a cause of celebration, that things, the pressure is being applied to them and they're buckling. And alliances are now being made with former rogue elements who were not aware of what's going on, now being shown the evidence and being convinced that what's happening here is not correct. I explained in Sunday's show about everyone has been lied to on every successive level. And when you consider the general public is probably about 40 levels down, the depth of and that may be a low figure, the depth of the compartmentalization of every single organisation, where one level doesn't know what the level above is doing or below, then you realise how they've been able to do this for so long. It's clever from their aspect, you have to say that, because they've duped literally every single living soul on this planet. And it doesn't matter whether you're an average everyday Joe or the President of the United States. The same lies and the same diversion of truth to what's going on is both equal. All these people that have operated the system, many of them are largely unaware of what is really going on. They're now finding out. Samsung's de facto head, Lee Jae-yong, was arrested in Seoul on Friday morning on charges of bribery over his alleged role in an explosive corruption scandal that has riveted South Korea. Well, South Korea is one of the proxy countries for the cabal, a bit like Japan, although Japan is weakening badly. And the 48-year-old heir apparent to the Samsung empire was taken into custody after the courts, which had rejected a special prosecutor's first request, granted a second request to issue a warrant for his detention. This now means that both the head of South Korea's largest conglomerate and the country's president have now fallen. That is another sign of cleaning house, and it's not just here. The president and the largest corporation. Remember the transnational corporations mentioned in the executive order last week? Well, there you go. And this particular scandal is widening by the week, and it revolves around allegations of bribery and influence at the highest levels. They are not able to hide anymore. United States, according to this article, is much better off without Michael Flynn serving as a national security advisor, but no one should be cheering the way he was brought down. The whole episode is evidence of the precipitous and ongoing collapse of America's democratic institutions, not a sign of their resiliency. Flynn's ouster was a soft coup or a political assassination engineered by anonymous intelligence community bureaucrats. Results might be salutary, but this isn't the way a liberal democracy is supposed to function. Unelected intelligence analysts work for the president, not the other way round. Far too many Trump critics appear to care that these intelligence agents leaked highly sensitive information to the press, mostly because Trump critics are pleased with the result. This was an excerpt taken out of a bigger article, and it shows how they're trying to spin it, and the fact that they're even attempting to spin news items is another sign they're losing. Mr. Flynn was removed because he wasn't required anymore. Nothing to do with Russia. And what they're saying, an anonymous intelligence community. Yes, there is. That's the cavalry. You're going to see a lot more of it. Oh, you know. China is now taking on North Korea. Again, this is a sign of the change. And we mentioned last week China's taken down the dragon families and the elders. And here's another example. That they are using sanctions against North Korea. It's suspending all imports of coal from North Korea as part of its efforts to increase pressure on North Korea over its latest missile tests. China's Commerce Ministry said the ban would operate until the end of this year. It follows reports this week that China had rejected a shipment of North Korean coal worth $1 million, and the ban brings China, North Korea's only ally, closer to fully implementing tough sanctions aimed at stopping the nuclear weapons program. Now, for those of you who don't know, coal is North Korea's biggest export, and its shipments to China is probably the largest portion of the country's what is quite a fragile economy. The tightening from China has been incremental, but this is a very big strategic move. Obviously, most of you will be aware North Korea tested more sophisticated missiles earlier this month. It's probably also linked to the assassination of Kim Jong's half-brother last week. North Korea relies heavily for its trade, as I said, on China, and China has basically now said, you quit that, otherwise we're going to collapse your economy, which is it to be. So North Korea and the clans that's operating Kim Jong need to either clean house or face the consequences of what's going to happen from the rest of the world. I think he's being used. I think he's another cabal stooge, Kim Jong. As all the nuclear powers are basically winding down, in that he ramps up. It's interesting. This is something that's quite shocking. I've heard of warning before, but again, it's evidence of soulless entities or humans who have lost their way or lost complete touch with reality just to earn money. Femi Achulani has survived an attempted kidnapping in Malawi by people wanting to kill her for her body parts. In Malawi, like many other countries in the region, people with albinism are hunted down because of the belief that potions made from their body parts can bring good luck and wealth. It boggles the mind. Who put those belief systems in place? Very often we look at the things from the effect point of view. That's the hidden hand, sleight of hand. You have to look at who caused it. You know, certain Americans blame Syrians, and we blame Iraqis and all kinds of other in the Middle East. But the issue is not from there, is it? The issue is from here. Too often we look at the effect rather than the cause. The key to this is getting to the bottom of who came up with the idea that it was good luck and wealth. Anyway, she went on and told a BBC documentary how a gang had tried to lure her away from her home 2 years ago. 5 men and 1 woman came to a house about 7 o'clock in the evening. They arrived when I was in the kitchen preparing supper and my husband was outside. They told him that they were looking for me, that they were a policeman and had come to protect me, but they had got a tip that some people were looking to kill me. Meanwhile, they tried to abduct her for her body parts. It boggles my mind. It really does. It just doesn't seem to be an end to the depravity to make money. And they do say money's the source of all evil. Well, there you have it. Well, there was back to the US. There's a lot of protests last week, but unfortunately, maybe these companies should be publicised and shamed and shut down. As more than 100 workers in America have lost their jobs in the last week after taking part in last week's Day Without Immigrants protest. Dozens of people, including construction workers and restaurant staff, reported being fired after staying at home on Thursday. The protest aimed to highlight the contribution of immigrants in America. One employer told CNN his staff would have to pay the price of standing up for what they believed in. Mr. Serowski of JVS Masonry in Commerce City, Colorado, said he had no regrets after sacking about 30 bricklayers. He went on to say they were warned, if you do this you're hurting the company, and if you go against the team you're not a member of the team. In other words, a bit like Idiot Bush with you're either with us or against us. Perhaps that company, JVS Masonry, needs to be boycotted. That's how the people can fight back. If they're choosing to impinge on our freedoms, then we should impinge on theirs. It doesn't take violence, it just takes a bit of effort. Saying we're not employing that company, shut them down. US President Donald Trump has named Lieutenant General Mr. McMaster as his new national security advisor. He replaced General Michael Flynn, who was fired after just 3 weeks and 3 days in the job. The lieutenant with the US Army, Mr. McMaster, served in Iraq and Afghanistan, where he worked on a government anti-corruption drive. Interesting. Mr. Trump's first choice apparently was retired Vice Admiral Robert Harwood, turned down the role citing personal reasons. So Mr. McMaster is the new National Security Advisor. I would think he'd be rather busy. For those of you with long memories, I think it was November time when we were talking about disclosure and capital D disclosure, and I made the comment, paraphrasing, I would expect NASA to announce they found planets with the possibility of harbouring life next. Well, NASA did the press conference, and unfortunately they didn't announce that they found life inside the Kennedy Space Center, but apparently they found a planet 40 light years away, or a system 40 light years away, with 7 Earth-sized planets. Funny how that number 7 keeps coming up, doesn't it? After last Sunday's show, the occurrences of the number 7. Anyway, 3 of which circle the parent star at the right distance for liquid water on the surface, which raises, of course, the prospect of life. The star is known as TRAPPIST, is a small, dim celestial body in the constellation of Aquarius. Of all the ones to announce, they chose that one. I wonder why. Is it the age? Researchers said that the proximity of the system, combined with the proportionally large size of its planets compared to the small star, make it a good target for follow-up studies to help to scan the planet's atmospheres for possible chemical fingerprints of life. No surprise. All part of their drip-fed disclosure. It'll get to a point though where it ramps. There will be a tipping point and it will ramp up. Mexico. This is probably the last news. Yes, it is. Has condemned new guidelines issued by the United States on deporting undocumented immigrants. Under plans unveiled by the Trump administration on Tuesday, almost all people staying in America illegally can be subject to deportation. The Mexican Foreign Minister Luis Videgaray said his country could not accept unilateral decisions imposed by one government on another. The row comes as the 2 top US officials are preparing to visit Mexico this week, I think. White House Secretary Rex Tillerson and the head of Homeland Security John Kelly would talk to Mexican officials and walk through the implementation of the new immigration guidelines. They include plans to enforce an existing provision of the US Immigration and Nationality Act that allows authorities to send undocumented migrants back to Mexico, regardless of where they are from. So it went on. It's unclear whether the US has authority to force Mexico to accept foreigners, but we are not going to accept that because we do not have to, and it's not in the interests of Mexico, said Mr. Videgaray. This is going to, in essence, it's a distraction of what's going on a bigger scale. We covered some of it recently about the issues of migrants and the fun and games. But we also have to be very I've made it my position quite clear. I've repeated it often enough. You cannot be an immigrant on your own planet. And whether certain individuals don't like Mexicans or not, their role in building America up to what it is now must not be overlooked. There was a figure that was given out. I thought it was rather high, but it may be correct, that 80% of the construction industry was Mexicans. So everything that's being built, 4/5 of which were done by Mexican sweat labour. And that in itself, people will argue they're taking the jobs. Well, do those people want to do those jobs? We covered recently about a roofing contractor in Florida was having immense difficulty getting any roofers to do the job. They're either not qualified or they've got no papers. We all, heaven forbid, another hurricane comes through Florida. Because we're not going to have the roofs on our houses for a very long time if major companies don't have employees because of red tape, or they're throwing people out. It's fine saying let's get rid of this, but what do you have in its place? This plays out on a global scale. The certain countries around the world in the East were saying we're tired of the monetary system. We'll get rid of it, except they didn't have anything in its place to replace it. People are saying get rid of Trump. What do we have in place to replace him? Some would argue quite a lot. But if the answer is Hitlery, it's not. So I'm hoping through this show that people have a better understanding and quit the division that they created, that we all have to be different because we're from a different country. That's divide and conquer on a massive scale. Now they can put that into place, but it doesn't mean we have to follow it. Are there some bad Mexicans? Absolutely. There's bad people in every country. There's bad people on every planet. There's bad people on every species. Even in the animal world, you always get rogue elements. It doesn't mean to say you have to round them all up and throw them back over to a place where they don't want to go. We really need to think long and hard about what we're doing to other people around the planet just because they come from a different country. If we're going to advance as a species, we all have to learn to get on and quit the nonsense about borders and countries and cultures, which is another program to begin with anyway. Right. I'm going to read this intel out. It probably won't take us up to the top of the hour, but it's something that needs to be grasped. And then after the music break, I'm going to cover some aspects of Sunday's show. Now, there's been news reports that the State Department was removed. This is correct as I understood it. It's not the only department either. This is part of the sweeps that are ongoing. Now, a lot of you will get confused about certain news items being put out for the next month or so until we reach that tipping point. People were questioning why Flynn was thrown out. Well, at the beginning, when Trump was making appointments, there was no platform in which to operate from. Now there is. So Trump had to appoint certain people to appease certain factions. It could also be seen as placing a Trojan horse. You'll know what I mean by referring to that. Mr. Flynn basically outed a whole heap of people. So now the platform is in place and the cavalry are operating with a policy of take no prisoners. The idea of appeasing certain factions or certain shadow groups no longer applies. So that is why Mr. Flynn was removed. No need to appease certain groups. The replacement will operate for and on behalf of the people. Now this won't be the last of the initial appointments that will get thrown out. There will be more. And eventually there should be left a cabinet or a team that will operate in the real way. Not their way, the real way. Now I played the song, the second song, Break On Through, 72 hours ago. There was a massive break on through. Some of the top brass, or the clowns as I've referred to them in the past, in the military, yes, those of the MIC, Military Industrial Complex, with their fistful of dinars waiting for the RV payout, which we kept telling them would never come, and it didn't. That's why the Asian faction, who are pushing it along with the Rothschilds, are at each other's throat, and why the Rothschilds jumped ship from the east and tried to get back in the west via the UK, but failed. Well, the top brass people have now finally seen that the RV was bullshittery all along. You could have listened to this show or Cosmic Voice. We could have told them that 3 years ago. Now, what has taken place? Talks have been ongoing this week, and this will clarify a lot of things for them and for us. And if it goes well, and so far it is, this will lead to an escalation of the takedown of the rogue elements. As Drake would say, ooh-wee. Now the next thing on the agenda is probably going to take place within the next 2 months. Certain banks in America, and I suspect it may go further afield, particularly the ones that are completely insolvent, of which many of them are. The main ones are JP Morgan, Citibank and Wells Fargo. They're the most in danger ones. Those banks are going to be nationalised. Not private entities anymore, nationalised as part of the American banking system. Rest assured, this will not affect any customers of those banks, none whatsoever. A nationalisation of banks will lead to a full end of the Federal Reserve Bank as we know it. The Fed will be realigned in with the American Treasury, repurposed. They will not be printing bogus money where the US Inc. operating as the government then borrows off them at 6%. No more of that nonsense. And America will regain full control over its finances once this is completed. No more interference by City of London, UN, IMF, World Bank. Independent finance. American banks for American people, which will be completely transparent. The new system is waiting to roll out once the clowns who have been continuing with the RV bullshittery finally come to their senses. Of course, the end to the Fed and the banking criminality also then leads on to the platform being provided for the full return to a US Republic, not Republic of China or Republic of France, Republic of America, and a return to the single constitution, not the four we have now, the organic constitution of 1871 will be restored. And people said things are not happening. So this is what's going on. This is why things are very quiet. And this is why you're getting all kinds of distractions. Very major things are going down currently. It'll get to a point where there's no option but for the rogue media to cover it. They can't carry on acting stupid or playing games with the public's head. They're being exposed. Their viewing figures have collapsed. Let's collapse them a bit more and not turn their channels on. Again, that's what we can do. All you have to do is press off or change channel. Listen to your local news or listen to stuff that's on the internet. Not all of it's correct, obviously. You know, there's an awful lot of BS in the alternative media. We've covered that multiple times over the last 12-18 months. But there's enough in there now to realise that the sea of change is increasing in pace by the minute, never mind by the day or week. We're in extraordinary times. I want the public event so the public can have been left in no uncertain terms. I know what's going on, or large portions of what's going on. There was more intel that I could have put out, but I couldn't tonight, because things are so sensitive of what's taken place. That's largely to protect the public, so they don't go into panic. Of course, we sort of mentioned last week about the police went on strike in Brazil. and lawlessness ensued. That's not a good example of us showing personal responsibility and being able to look after ourselves. Basically, those Brazilian people showed they must have something controlling them. The key is personal responsibility of yourself. If we all do that, we don't need anybody controlling us, police, and least of all, heavy-handed government. So I hope you enjoyed that intel. I'll be covering the Sunday show mainly in the next portion, and then we'll get into some Q&A. But times, they are a-changing. Come gather round, people, wherever you... Hi all, and welcome back to the second hour. Well, we had a fairly big show on Sunday. Like I said, it was packed with a lot of information on many subjects, and it's part of, like I said, a large part of my own knowledge, personal knowledge, and knowledge gained and researched over a long period of time, and complemented by that particular article by Nikolai Levashov and a few others who were involved in that as well. Chloe, Shane, Tanath, Sunfire, Drake. There was quite a collection involved in it, and I knew once the show was done that it would have an effect on people in different ways, because we're all different, and we're all at different learning levels, and we've all got different tolerance levels as well. And with the idea of doing it now, I was kind of drawn. I don't think it was a coincidence that I found the evidence of the GNA, which is the primary matter, the stuff of creation, the ultimate creation of all organic life and material matter. 18 months after I was told, I suspect over the last 18 months, the return of the primary matter G had to be completed to a point where I then, having received the knowledge of it, then found out where it come from, how it happened, and where it all went, and it was safe to then put out that information. So, like I said, I don't think it was a coincidence. But Sunday's show was about expanding people's truth bubble, as I particularly like to call it, and some were ready for it, some did okay, and some did not. Now, all reactions to it are all good as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't matter whether people didn't like it or didn't like some portions of it, because what I would then like people to do is look at the portions they didn't like and think more on it. Was it because the information surprised you or shocked you, and perhaps you needed a bit more time? It's possible. Only you, the individual, knows that. But it allows, the reactions to it allows us all to think and act on a deeper level of understanding of both ourselves and our surroundings. And the show divided opinions. Like I say, some loved it, some were neutral, and some disliked it, and all feelings are good to me, like I said. But the overview of the last show, once you took a step back in its entirety was about overcoming something against all odds and triumphing. And humanity has triumphed against all odds. And to me, that's a source of pride for our species. Is there still ongoing things that we're not happy with? Absolutely. You know, we covered enough in the first hour. But these are minor things in real terms compared to the skullduggery that's been going on this planet over many thousands of years. It pales into insignificance. Sunday's show was like the macro. We deal with the micro level of politics and divide and conquer and religion and all the other stuff that causes angst and criminal underworld, etc. But there's a far bigger aspect to all of this. I've said many times before, a lot of the cabal, as we know it, or particularly the minions, are completely oblivious to what was put out on last Sunday's show. Oblivious. No one knows what's going on. Like I mentioned in the first hour, this compartmentalization goes back millions of years. If people think the president is the problem, think again. There's 20 layers of secrecy for a start, but there's about another 50 layers above that, most of which is not from here. So if the people that saw it as a celebration and as a triumph, kudos to you, because you were able to see the overview version of the show, and it suggests you are in a good place within yourself, which is what this show is all about, empowering and lifting everyone up. For those that didn't see it that way, suggests more inner work is required to reach and attain that level. Now, don't take this as a personal reflection of you, because it's not. Each and every one of us gets tested where we need to do our inner work, where certain things keep coming up in our lives because we didn't deal with it in the right manner the previous time, otherwise it wouldn't repeat. So don't see it as a failure, because it's not. There is no real failure in life. It's about how you learn and how you react to it. If you feel some aspects of it's not good, look at it. Go into yourself. Is it part of your makeup that injustice? There was one particular part of the show that people have struggled with. Is it that part of the injustice that you feel you need to do more? Well, you can only do your part. Too often in this life, we are made to feel guilty for the sins of others. I mentioned it in a previous show. Basically, all of us that listen to this show are the sin eaters. We've taken our own responsibility. We've taken our own path. We've gone down the difficult route of learning the harsh truth, while the others go around oblivious. I don't want to hear about it. No, that's conspiracy. That's fake news. We're suffering the sins because they won't. But the sin eaters are rising to the top. The cream always does. So the show had admittedly some very harsh parts to it, and it was difficult for some to take on board. But disclosure of hidden knowledge will not always be nice news. In fact, most of it is not pleasant to hear. Some aspects of it is absolutely brutal. And I want people to consider, there's too many in the alternative media community seem to think that disclosure is going to be easy and kind of dismiss it. Oh well, the others will just have to suck it up. Well, it's been shown that some couldn't handle that disclosure on Sunday. And this is why, whilst I would love full disclosure, and I've repeated that many times, certain ones like to hold it against me, whilst I would love full disclosure, we can only have full disclosure when the majority of the populace are ready. It's disclosure of the lies and the heinousness of some of the acts that have gone on is not easy to absorb. Most of us have been able to process it over a number of years. Imagine trying to process it in a few weeks or a few months. It's brutal. So there's a lesson to be learned in amongst that, is not to dismiss disclosure as something that's going to be easy, because it's not. The key to any knowledge base is how you react to it. If you rail against the knowledge, it can be for two reasons. It doesn't resonate with you, which is fine, or you are hung up on certain aspects of it and not quite ready for that type of disclosure. Again, we've covered this in previous shows, Pizzagate being one of them. You know, most people 12 months ago wouldn't look at that. Now people are. Why? Because they're better prepared. Again, that's all part of the learning curve each of us, each and every one of us goes through, myself included. My learning curve over the last 4 years has been extraordinary. You know, but ultimately, if you're not quite ready for certain types of disclosure and only want to hand pick certain things, it shows you how far you are along that path. And like I said, don't treat it as though it's a failure because you can't accept this or you can't accept that. It's not. It's all part of everyone's learning curve that everyone goes through, myself included. So don't for 1 minute think you have failed, because nobody fails. It's ultimately about learning. And so it allows you, when you go through some new knowledge, and some of it that can be very harsh, to find out more about yourself, of how far you are ahead on certain aspects and maybe not on others. So in other words, in essence, it becomes a test for the self. It's non-competitive. Just because somebody else has learnt more than you doesn't make them better. Just because somebody else has gone higher up the evolutionary cycle doesn't make them better. Just different. But if you're struggling with if people struggle with last Sunday's show, in essence, what they are saying to themselves is, am I ready for disclosure? Now that's not for me to judge. That's up to you. And it's okay if you're not. Perfectly 100% okay to turn around and go, you know what, I'm not ready. This is too much. Because it then gives you the opportunity to learn more and be ready. This is why I've done the shows Th&I in a stair-step fashion, where the information stream has built up and increased, because it allows people to process it, absorb it, process it, and do something with it, and then to be ready for the next stage. Throwing it at people all in one go, you know, it's like confetti. How many pieces of confetti do you catch? Very few. But if it was thrown in small bits, you'd catch more of it. And that's the essence of stair-step disclosure. So what can the individual do to change if they're not ready? Well, you would be beneficial doing more inner work to prevent the mixed messages you as the individual is putting out. On the one hand, you're saying you're ready for disclosure, spit it all out, and the next one, oh, I don't like that. So this is what, again, going back a long time ago, in May 2015, I started talking about people doing their inner work, dealing with the trauma aspects of their life that still bothers them, and letting it go. As you do that, you're clearing your negative field, allowing more of the essence of life to come in. The beings that are involved, that I covered on Sunday's show, the vampiric entities, they love you in trauma. They love you in self-doubt, low self-esteem, limitation. Don't supply it. Let it go. It's something you've experienced. It may be part of your soul experience where you've asked for it. As harsh as some of the realities some of us have faced, that is always a possibility. But it's how you deal with it and how you react to it is the key of whether you retain that baggage or you let it go. So what we've been facing is here on planet Earth is most don't know what the problems have been, and this includes some of the large portions of the people in the cabal. They have no idea. And if you don't know what the problem is, how can you seek a solution to the said problem? You can't. And this is where disclosure comes in, where the truth starts to come out. Yes, it's brutal, like I've said. It is brutal. When you're talking on a macro level, it's bad enough dealing with foreclosures and all kinds of other shenanigans that go on around our world on a micro level. But macro level is brutal. It has been. Some of that was delivered on Sunday's show. There's other layers that maybe will push me into doing a part 2 to that. It won't be as brutal. just gives you perhaps a bit more background to it. We'll see how things go on that. So if you don't know the problem, you can't seek a solution. And so it all depends on the individual as to how they took that information in the last show. Some will see it as doom and gloom. Some will see the bigger aspects of how we are triumphing against all odds to end this shit. But there's always a bigger aspect, which is the macro. As many see it as just what happens here or just around their own lives, when what was occurring was universe-wide. A magnitude of change that has been absolutely colossal on a bigger stage. It's not just this planet that's being rescued. This whole universe, in essence, was being rescued. The sieving out of the primary matter G was making this universe hostile and affecting the cosmic tree. Well, like I said, they were mainly things on a macro level, but it has a massive bearing on the micro. And the largest aspect of the show for me was two sections, both of which each and everyone listening to this show can do without much effort, much fanfare or much sweat. Limitations and personal responsibility. They were put in because it's part of the problem, where we sit in this universal shit show, imposing limitations on ourselves and not taking personal responsibility, has escalated the situation here for us all. And I hope people, the transcripts on the files section on the Facebook page, I hope people read those two sections, as it doesn't take, all it takes is a bit of effort. Think about what you're saying. Like I said, people say, oh, that's impossible. Change it to I'm possible. It's that word magic. Be careful what you're saying. I never get any luck. Well, you've just delivered bad luck, because that's the word magic. I'm unlucky in love. You've just set your own tone. You just set your own path. Just change the words around. Now, one of the things that was mentioned on the page, and this, the most that disturbed was the soul elimination or reduction that bothered people most. And there was a comment, it doesn't explain to me why innocent victims should suffer for being victims. That's cruel and indifferent, whichever way I look at it. Well, there's a few aspects to this. That may be part of cosmic law. It may not be. It may be more to do with the interference. But it could also, playing devil's advocate here, I'm not saying it's correct, I'm just playing devil's advocate, a divine blueprint. We as humans, whether it's by interference or taking the easy way out, are not progressing the way we should be. It was mentioned during the show that we have no advancements on our species for the next generation, and that this in particular was hampering us. Well, could it not be seen as survival of the fittest? Not the best term to use, but it's probably the most easiest, where each and every one have survived everything that the dark has thrown at us. Again, that's a source of celebration for you, the individual. And yet, we still remain standing. Could it be also, on a soul level, having survived what is one of the toughest schools ever? Bear in mind there's other planets who have it far worse than we do, as I understand it. This is not the worst control system. Once you've completed this tougher school and the 7 evolutionary Earth cycles on a soul level, you go into the cosmos, a cosmological level. You then become the creator beings. Now, with your extensive experience of suffering and trauma in this vessel, would it not be the ultimate to see, well, that is not the way it should go, or the way it should happen, and on the next level you'll create something that's so far removed from this rogue elements, survival of the fittest, and create something much better than what's taking place in this universe? In essence then, would that not be an advancement of our species? So really, each and every one of you should be proud of yourselves, and I can't stress that. You've come through the shit show. All the fun and games on a universal level, on a galactic level, on a solar system level, and on a planetary level, and we're all still standing and fighting back. The mind control, the programming, the divide and conquer, the haves and the have-nots, the shite in our food, water, chemtrails. You know, we could go on for another 10-15 minutes explaining everything that's happened here, but we're all still here. They haven't taken us down, and rest assured, going forward, they won't. Their time is near to an end. Then we have a time where hopefully humanity will not act in the same way they have, and do something completely different and provide a better planet for us all to exist and coexist in harmony, where we treat each other better, we treat the plant life better, we treat the ecological system better, the oceans, everything treated better. Well, I think the shock of the issue where somebody murders somebody else, and both fall down the evolutionary cycle, and the reason being, the victim, it's fairly harsh, is they haven't completed their cycle. And yes, that's harsh. I think that's what most felt. It's that emotion of injustice again. We have enough injustice here without it happening on the soul level, and that I fully understand. But if it's part of a grander scheme where it is survival of the fittest, then that would explain those restrictions being imposed. It may not be. Like I said, that's just me playing devil's advocate. But if you haven't completed your evolutionary cycle, then that's the way it goes. Now, I happen to believe that it's more to do with the interference here. This is why this planet has been one of total war. So humanity cannot attain the higher levels of the evolutionary cycle here in this vessel. The ones who reach mental planes are unable or less able to be interfered with. This is why they keep most of humanity in the astral, where the loose predators are. Now, I think what shocked most is the souls being consumed by being trapped in the lower astral. I think that bothered people more than most. And you know why? Because you were under the misconception that humans are top of the food chain. Think about that. Because we're not. There are many beings that loosh our energy, heightened, be it negative energy or the heightened excitement, which is why they create high states of excitement at sporting events. You don't think that last Super Bowl was by chance, do you? Because it's not. All stage managed. And it's quite sobering for us all to realise that we can be eaten by other entities. But then perhaps we forget our role is that we have to eat other beings for us to sustain ourselves. And there's nothing wrong, essentially wrong with that. Some people, the vegans, will argue the point. But what if the species that was here before us lost their food supply? Because that's what took place here. The reptilian lost their food supply. So we became the food. Most people would have a hard time with that. But there was a famous film done about people who crashed in the mountains and no one could find them. And the sad outcome was they chose to decide who was going to eat each other. So at least some of them could survive. So we are capable of doing that. What they're doing to us in extreme conditions, that takes place. It's not pleasant. It's not something that none of us hopefully ever have to face, that sort of desperation. But that's basically what the reptilians that preceded us here faced when the dinosaurs was wiped out. And that is why we are not top of the food chain. Duncan O'Finian did a very good talk with Randy Morgans on Sunday, I think, and he also mentioned about entities attaching where there had been a trauma injury or an emotional upset. This again plays into doing your inner work and removing the baggage, clearing it out. Emotional upset can create weaknesses or weak points in your PSI field that I discussed in the show. Some people might want to call it the aura. That's the more scientific name, the PSI protection field. If you get an injury, that field is broken, and what happens then is certain entities who are looking for that weakness can then attach. And again, most of us are like mushrooms in the dark that this can actually take place, because we kind of think we're invincible. But I can, and I have seen these particular entities. Some of them I was able to remove attachments from some of the people. Some of you who are listening to this show will know about this. They are real. They do exist. And this is why we all have to work on ourselves to do as much as possible to prevent these vampiric entities disturbing our essence and our life force. Now, the PSI field, there was a portion about it where it describes ants. They combine all their PSI field into one unit. This is why you see thousands of ants running around and none of them bump into each other. They can't, but they're part of one collective consciousness. Now, this can also apply to humans. Are we at the moment capable of combining our PSI fields? No. There's too many selfish people, service to self, soulless entities and synthetics to be able to do that. But it doesn't mean to say the ones who are not can't. In essence, the way our group operates, where everyone's caring and sharing for each other, is combining our own PSI fields into one unit, where if one suffers, we all feel it. If one needs, we all provide. So I said I would like, once the foundation, the blockage is cleared to do that, the ultimate goal of the foundation is to create Th&I on a wider scale, where everyone's looking after each other, caring and sharing, not just one group, everybody. Now, how does a PSI field combine? One word: love. When you meet the right partner and you are in tune with each other, some of you may describe it as soulmates, that too becomes one. Then they have children. That increases the PSI protection field. And you wonder why they've been trying to destroy the family model. They don't want you collecting into groups. Of course, what happens when a divorce takes place, I know only too well. All the friends split up. Some goes to the female side and some goes to the male. But it wasn't the combined unit it was before the split, was it? So a parting of two people has an impact on maybe 50 to 100 people surrounding you. This is why they are trying to break up people. Now, the next portion I want to cover is manifestation. I mentioned a few months ago that this was would become easier than it's ever been, because of certain constructs and certain conditions now allow it more of that thought process to go out. Now, manifestation comes again with personal responsibility. Think. Be careful. You know the words, be careful what you wish for. Now, an example, and this is not 100%, but it's close to it. People were asking for water in California. Think about that. The water came back, but you didn't ask for it in a certain manner, did you? So all that water that went missing during the drought has unfortunately come back in one go. And this is why, going forward, you have to be very, very careful of what you're wishing for. Be more specific. So we mentioned about the mental planes, because the the soul evolutionary cycle is the physical, the etheric, the astral, and the four mental planes. Now the key to for us is reaching the mental planes, preferably the top one, because that means you're then out of the physical and into the cosmos on a soul level. Now this is where intelligence comes in, but not necessarily. People can be very clever but not evolve spiritually. The difference is intellect. It's a different thing. And those that reach the mental planes are then able to access more of their brain mass. That's where the intellect kicks in. So instead of only using 3 to 5%, you're then starting to go into the rest of the mass. This is why things change drastically once you reach the mental planes of your soul evolution. And this is why they're desperate to keep humanity in the astral and etheric. You know, this is where the greater known comes in. People have said to me, how can you know all this knowledge? You know, it's a lot to learn. Well, I've been learning over a long period of time. But for the last 18 months, 2 years, the information comes to me rather than me going to it. And that's what happens when you reach the mental level of evolutionary cycle. The ultimate goal is to get everyone onto the mental planes as quick as possible, because then the loose farms are discounted, and then the advancements of the species and the individual would be exponential. Can you still achieve it in this lifetime? Even now, yes. Don't impose limitations. Just because someone may be only on the astral and somebody's only on the mental doesn't make them better. They just have more abilities. So you have to strive to attain that. But the person who's on the mental levels may have done this cycle 50 times. You, who may be on the astral level, this may be your first lifetime here. So who's made the more development? So never treat soul development as a competition comparing it to somebody else, because that doesn't apply. The competition on a soul level is inside of you, not external. And that's so important to grasp. This is why I'm talking about not competing. Once you're competing, you're going external. The biggest competition is internal. Can I elevate myself, soul growth and individual wise, to the highest I can be? Not to be better than your friend or your neighbour or your loved one. No, 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 no. Just better for you. So like I said earlier, people should watch very, very carefully now where their attention is going. Do not allow them to distract you. We are being bombarded with distractions. Don't allow them to throw you off your path. What is taking place now, and some of you will resonate with this, is an accelerated learning is ongoing at this moment in many, many people. You're learning things and absorbing things and processing things at a much quicker rate than ever before. And this is a part of the, how can I put it, the ascension of the planet, both on a planetary level and on a species level. Recognize it, because it's an achievement of the self. You have created the conditions within yourself, not from help from me or anybody else. You've created the conditions within yourself to be able to absorb what you're doing now and learn what you're doing now, and it will accelerate. It has been. It will get to a point where you just know things. You don't have to ask me certain questions, which is the ultimate for me on this show, where you all understand the knowledge. Yes, you may ask deeper questions, but once you get to a certain space, like I said, it comes to you rather than you going to it. That's what happens when you expand your truth bubble and your soul growth increases. All the information, everything I put on the show on Sunday is not, I'm not the only one who knows that information. The whole cosmos knows it. Everyone who listened to that show knows that information. You've just forgotten. So it doesn't make me special because I know it and nobody else does. All I've done is accessed the cosmos intelligence network, which is available to all. It's far easier when you're on the mental plane, but it's there for all. So the mental planes of knowing and why, and this is why they've used these methods to trap many in the astral. Like I said in the show, this is where the terms heaven and hell come from. The astral is split into two layers. The hell realm, which is the lower astral, which is closer to the physical, than the higher astral, which is then heading towards the mental planes. For those of you who remember some aspects of your dream time, it's quite easy to know which layer you have been operating in. If there's beings chasing you, you may not be able to see the beings, but you just sense you're being chased, or you're battling, is the lower astral. If you then have a dream where you're floating and don't feel you have any like zero gravity and a ultimate bliss feeling which can't be described in 3D terms, that's the heaven portion of the astral. And ultimately you're rather close to then escaping the astral and going into the mental planes, where abilities then come into play. The ability to bilocate, where you can transfer your consciousness from one place to another, and not just in the dream time either, where you can heal people both next to you and from afar. This is why they didn't want us on the mental planes. So many of us have been caught up on the effects of what has taken place, but not the cause. And this really should be looked at closely, micro and macro. Now, I've been asked, this word of warning: if you do not want to hear this portion of the show, it's about abortion, I would advise you to turn off or turn your volume down for the next 5 minutes if you're uncomfortable with it. But I've been asked to put it out. But word of warning for the ones who may not want to hear it at this time. Now, abortion is not very good. But the problem is we haven't been educated enough to make the better decisions. If we're aware of what takes place both during and after an abortion, how many women would change their mind and not go ahead? And that is getting to the cause of it, and not focusing on the effects. The cause is we have not been told what takes place within our own bodies, and we haven't been told for a reason, because they like the loose factories. So we have a culture, that program, creating issues where men compete amongst themselves for how many chicks they can sleep with, like it's some sort of a trophy. And sadly, a lot of the Western women over the last 30 years are doing the same thing. Now, my opinion on abortion is it's the woman's choice, and nobody else should interfere or judge her on that decision. It's her body. And yes, there may be people who disagree with that. Maybe the father. But at the end of the day, the father enjoyed the act, but will he accept the consequences? Sadly, many don't. And so the woman's left. But the idea that we have accepted a society where aborting children is largely based from a financial aspect is a complete abomination. and a total denigration of society. I can't have this child, I can't afford it. Very ridiculous. How is our species progressing in that manner, where the idea is we have children based on finance? The children are the future, and we're discarding them because of finance. That has to be corrected. Gaddafi, he gave money, large sums of money, to the parents of every child. I think it was somewhere in the region of $50,000. Doesn't seem such a monster now, the Western world portrays, does he? They also provided funds for the education of that child. Yeah, according to the Western world, Mr. Gaddafi was a monster. But he knew how to look after children. Now this is the portion that you may want to turn off if you don't wish to hear it. It's very short. Abortion is classed as the worst sin of all for the following reasons. This is a far more serious breach of natural law than murder. Now, the reason this is the case is because of the dangers of permanent damage to the soul of the child. At that point, when most abortions take place, it's not just a case of removing a few pieces of tissue which at that time lacks any human resemblance. We went through the phases of a childbirth, and the human aspect doesn't come in until the 5th month. But what it's denying is the soul, the biomass required to make a physical vessel for itself. And during an abortion, both the woman and the physician take on heavy karma. I bet they didn't tell the people who were physicians that, did they? And you wonder why humanity is trapped in the lower levels for this long. We're all taking on karma we have no idea we're doing. Now, further complications of abortion is it ruins a woman's immune system. It disturbs her hormonal balance and often leads to oncological problems later in life. That's the essence of abortion. For those of you who have turned off, it's safe to turn it back on. But I thought I would give you a warning, because some people do not want to hear that. Some people have been enforced in very unfortunate circumstances to have abortions against their will, or because of poor finances, or because of lack of housing. There's a whole heap of reasons. But I think if the mother was told what I've just read out, how many would still go ahead? Would that physician go ahead? Probably not. Probably not. Other aspects of the show, the sun and the flood parts in the show were basically theories of mine. I wouldn't take them as full fact. It's something for people to think about and consider. It fits some aspects and not in others. Scientists this week just announced the theory of an unnova compared to a supernova. One day they will realise that a black hole is a portal to the next universe. One day. This is where the Big Bang comes in for this portion of the universe we're in. They're saying it's a Big Bang. No, it didn't. We just went through a portal from another universe. And the creation of matter and life was conducive to what we have in this system. So I hope you enjoyed covering the aspects of last Sunday's show. But like I said, in spite of all what they've done to us, all of us are still here fighting and exposing the rogue elements. That in itself should be a source of celebration for you. Yes, every single one of you have beaten all the odds and are still here to stick two fingers up to them and say, fuck you. Where are we now? Let's have a celebration song, shall we? Hi all, welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show, and we'll go into some Q&As now. Let's shut down that song. Yeah, all gone. Right, where are we now? Some questions. Some interesting ones this week. In fact, they're getting more and more interesting every week. So kudos to the members on the page. For the past 6 months or so, this person has been having problems finding things, and she insists it's not because of her glasses. And we'll take her word for it. And she looked through every room for the object several times, and all of a sudden it's there. I know other people are going through this too. What is going on here? Right. There's a lot of changes going on. Some of them I've covered in the shows previously. Basically, the glitches in the matrix and the hologram. It's the overlay. And of course there's the other possibility of interference. I mentioned about the Bigfoot, the term that we use here, Abominable Snowman, the Yeti, Sasquatch. There's very many different names. And the reason why very few are able to see them, or they only see them fleetingly, is they can use their advanced abilities, which we have or have had, where they can project into your brain on a certain frequency and make you view things in a different manner. So you may see a tree instead of when you're actually in real terms looking at the Sasquatch. But I think the most likely thing is the two worlds, the organic and inorganic, the living souls and the synthetics, and the collapse of the matrix system is fracturing some of the time. And so it's not something to be worried about. Yes, it can be annoying, but these are the parts of what's likely to be several what would be described as paranormal events in everybody's lifetime. You know, the buzzing of the ears is different. These are all the effects of the changes that have been made on a macro level, and more people will start to notice it. You know, these things have happened for a long time, but it's now increasing. That's why people are suddenly coming forward and mentioning it, because of the increasing aspect to it. Well, it will do. So don't be worried about it. It's just a glitch in the matrix. Oops. It seems it's collapsing. Next question. When I meditate, I see on golden walls what looks like Sanskrit and hieroglyphs. What is up with that? I know it must sound silly, but this happens in deep meditative state. No, it's not silly. I would suggest this is past life memory, and you need to go deeper. Once you accept that this is part of your past experience and recognize it in the physical, you're then able to create the channel to open up the knowledge of the past. So take that on board. If you feel that fits with you and you're comfortable with it, you then go in with the intention of remembering more. Duncan O'Finian stated on Off-Planet Radio that healers are identifying new problems that may be related to CERN or chemtrails. Can you comment on these? CERN, I will not veer off that. It is not an issue. There may be, as Randy stated on his show, a residual effect, but it's more of an echo, not a reality. They failed with CERN. It had failed from the last week in August, first week in September of 2015. Or was it 16? Time flies. And this is why there's very little mention of it now. Chemtrails are a different story. I would suggest, but don't take this to the bank just yet, this is a final throw of the dice, a last desperate attempt. I don't think we're going to be seeing too many chemtrails in the near future. And the guy's name is Randy, not Brandy, for that person who asked that question. Brandy Morgans, I'll have to wind him up over there. Aldazanian and Braxton's, I'll have it. I'll see how much time, but I've got quite a detailed description for Aldazani and Braxton's. I may do that towards the end of the hour. Anu, I've done some work on the Sumerian language. Anu, the heavenly one, so he thinks. Is this entity real and still around today? It depends. Yes, it's real. He is the head of the Draco, and discourse with him continues with people from this planet. He is changing, in my opinion. He's seen the error of the ways. Some are suggesting he's changed a lot. Well, proof is in the pudding, as we say back in the UK. We need to see more evidence that the Draco are being controlled and acting in a better manner than they have done in the past. You will find out when I do the Abraxan Aldazani how much the Draco have been messed with. Yes, he is still around today, but not on this planet. Who was the Pope holding hostage? Pope wasn't holding anyone hostage. The Pope, for those like I mentioned earlier, who think that the US presidents, who remove the US president, be it Obama or Bush or Trump, is solving the problem, means they don't understand the layers that operate behind the American president. And the same applies in the Vatican. Who you think removing the Pope solves all the ills of the Vatican? You haven't done your research enough. There's some very dark entities, both human and none, operating in that building. Now, if I was to release the name of that hostage, it would cause mayhem and likely get me killed. So, hostage was removed, and no, the person who gave the answer on the pinned post, it is not that entity. Archangels are not good. That's their real name. Is this an ongoing process, rescuing planets from the inside through incarnation? Yes, it's happened many times in this universe. Many of the ones who have rescued other planets are here to rescue here also. It's like a cosmic army, for want of a better terms, going around breaking matrices and constructs. And that cosmic army is doing rather well. What are the mechanisms behind this operation? Well, that's not an easy one to answer. I'm probably best left. When we become organic, does our bodily functions change? Not wildly. It will alter in certain aspects because we will change ourselves in certain aspects. That all comes down to the individual. So it's not like we're all going to change into crystal or anything like that, because we're still in the physical. The functions will change, because maybe we won't need to eat certain things that requires that bodily function. I don't know all the answers to that, but that's something to go on. If karmic law determines that the killer gets stuck in the lower astral, no, he doesn't get stuck in the lower astral. Kind of mix the information up a bit there. The killer drops down the evolutionary cycle himself and the victim. That pushing down the evolutionary cycle then leads the lower astral to be able to feed off that individual easier. Some get pushed down to the etheric. Now, if the channel or the portal, or the correct scientific name, the qualitative barrier, is not created back in the next lifetime for that individual, they will be stuck in the etheric, and the lower astral will attack. That's where a lot of souls get devoured. So don't assume the killer or the victim just goes to the lower astral. If a certain being was on, for argument's sake, the third or fourth mental plane, but only going down to the second or third mental plane, it still puts them above the lower astral levels. so the killer doesn't necessarily get stuck in the lower astral. Why do cabal members engage in ritual killings? A lot of them are coerced and have no option. A lot of them are soulless entities, and some of them are psychopathic. None of them will be aware of the impact of it. It's all part of the compartmentalization. Do they participate in ritual killings because they are stuck in the lower astral? No. Does this also apply for people that commit crimes that result in many deaths, i.e. indirect killing, like toxic vaccines, but do not administer it themselves? Good question. The ones that administer those vaccines will pay the karmic price. Didn't tell that to the doctors and nurses when they joined up, did they? Now, most people will think that's harsh, and that I understand. I'm fully on board with that harshness. But this has an overview picture, which is what I'm largely good at, looking at it from an overview point of view. But I will stress, I fully understand the basic of it and the unfairness of it. But this is why each and every person needs to be told disclosure of what we're actually doing that affects things and other beings on levels we don't understand. Now, there's many of us who are now aware of the issues of vaccines, but many of us who listen to this show have got children, or their own, or their grandchildren, and have sat by and watched their daughters or their sons allow hospitals or schools to administer vaccines. Have we done enough to educate? Some would argue yes, we have, and they just ignore you. Well, you've absolved yourself of that responsibility. That individual hasn't. Again, it's harsh, but again it comes down to who you believe. Do you believe it because I've told you on the show? Or do you believe it because your parents told you? Or do you believe it because some clown on CNN or Fox tells you? Every parent has their own responsibility, and I had the same argument with my eldest son, and I told him, be it on your own head. I have warned you about vaccines, and heaven forbid one of the grandchildren suffers because of it, but don't come crying to me for help or anybody else because you were told and chose to ignore it. This is the crime of mainstream media. To me, every one of them should be strung up for treason against humanity. Every single one of them, they've partook in committing treason against humanity by lying to the public on every level. So there's perhaps multiple aspects of this, and I hope me giving an overview. Some of it's playing devil's advocate. I've made it clear where I stand on it. Well, I hope I have. There's always one or two like the Jermaine Chavez's of this world who thinks I'm campaigning for partial disclosure. No, that's what we're getting, whether we like it or not. Funny, he couldn't handle disclosure when the truth was given, but perhaps he has more learning to do. I wish him well. In general, after one dies, where does the soul go, and does it have a choice where it goes next? Well, a lot depends on whether they've completed. Well, we'll talk about this planet first. If the soul has completed the evolutionary cycle and gone through the mental planes, sadly, very few humans go and do the full planes. This is where the reincarnation soul trap came in. That is now not an issue. You can then go wherever the soul chooses to go. You can reincarnate. If you haven't completed your planetary cycle, you can go to another planet where there's life. You're not necessarily attached to Earth. Like I said, there's supposedly 220,000 intelligent species in this Milky Way alone. So you have a large choice of planets of where to go. It depends on your own individual soul growth. Now, if you've completed the evolutionary cycle, then you go on the cosmic level, where you don't have a physical vessel. You are spirit. And it's up to you what you do as that spirit. Do you go on and complete the cosmic evolutionary cycle and become a creator being, where you're creating stars and planets? It's all about the power of thought then, not using energy and limbs to move things. So that's what happens, but it takes, memory serves me correctly, around 9 to 12 months before the soul finally loses all connection to the vessel. I would suggest that that's where the soul itself has its life review. What it's learned, what it didn't learn, and the plan is for the next lifetime of, I'm going to come in with these conditions. Because that's going to jump me up the evolutionary cycle on a soul level. Hope that answered your question. I've watched Byron Katie's YouTube regarding participants working through their adverse reactions of Trump. In respect of your recent discussions regarding working through our shadow selves, would you consider this a good illustration of how our shadow side control our present behaviour? Yes, it is. If you're always feeling down and depressed, then it's a reflection of the inner version of you, a projection. Now, if you've done your shadow side, dealt with your traumas in life, and cleared it out, forgiven yourself and forgiven the ones who may have traumatized you, and moved on, then when things don't go our way or are of a negative impact, the reaction is not as severe as to the ones who have done their shadow work, because you've got a vessel full of, how can I put it, a clearer energy stream, with the negative baggage stripped away, dealt with. You've moved on to a higher level. So when a trauma comes to you, or a situation which is not to your benefit, if you're in that state of being, you react to it an awful lot different if you're carrying all that negative baggage. Bad things happen, you just shrug your shoulders. Oh well, such is life, they won't drag me down. You've heard me saying that many times. I've been attacked on all levels, right from a child. But I always had the inner strength to go, you know what, you're not going to pull me down to your level. I always rise above it and come out of it stronger. I couldn't do that before the age of 30 because I carried a victimhood around with me because of perceived wrongs in my youth. I had to let it go, otherwise everything that happens feels like it's weighing you down. Well, it is, but you're carrying pounds and pounds of negative trauma. But people have an adverse of reactions of somebody else. It's nothing to do with Trump, it's to do with themselves. They're only projecting. People project anger because of their inner feelings. This is why we say go within, deal with it from within, not project it out. Most, if not all, of anger is a projection of your inner self. Where are we next? I am hopeful and disturbed by Trump activities. Well, you're going to be, because things are chaotic, and you're best taking a step back, like most of us, and letting everything settle. The picture will not become clearer for another couple of months yet. Robert Steele has, I think, been very thoughtful in his suggestions to Trump and help him to be successful in dealing with our country's many problems. Robert Steele is ex-CIA, so he says. The proof of which CIA is still to be revealed. So I'd be very careful about what suggestions is being made. Is there a way to get Trump to hear these helpful and necessary changes he needs to make? Yes, and it's ongoing. Do my sources have communication abilities to him or the people who are handling him? Yes, we do. Trump Steele states is basically alone and without necessary information and support he needs to survive the plans against him by deep state or to be successful against him. That is 100% wrong, and suggests perhaps Mr. Steele doesn't know an awful lot of what's really going on behind the scenes, because the platform is there. Trump is being told what he has to do. No more appeasing certain factions, some of which he went along with against his will, and some of them it wasn't against his will. If Mr. Trump, now he has a platform of support, doesn't deliver, Mr. Flynn won't be the only appointment that gets removed. Bear that in mind. I feel like I have occasionally received healing energies throughout the past years, but more intense over the past few months, that do help and feel wonderful. That's good. Bear in mind, you've brought them on yourself. It's not an external force, it's an internal force. Orgtelis recently stated that life forces have technologies to heal and help forces working for the benefit of humanity. Yes, but we have to be very cautious of this technology. Things appearing as light are not always what they seem. That's not a reflection of Orgtelis, that's just a basic overview statement. We have to be very, very careful going forward with technology. Once conditions arise on this planet that's beneficial for us all, and our own limitations are removed, and we have a knowledge of who and what we are and what we are capable of, the reality is we won't need machines to fix us. We can do it ourselves. And yes, some will say that's not possible. Well, there's evidence all over the world. There is people who listen to this show who have witnessed it. You know who I'm referring to. It's all about what you believe in. If you believe you can go and do job X, Y and Z and put the effort in, you will obtain that job, because that's what you manifested for yourself. Like I said earlier, manifest is much easier now than it has been in the past. Apparently there's a spring revolution planned and backed by Soros clan to storm the White House with 3 million paid people to overthrow Trump. Do you think this will happen, and will it succeed? Well, unless the rise of the zombies, Soros won't be doing anything. He's dead. I don't care who doesn't believe that. He's dead. Yes, they can play with clones and lookalikes and doubles. The entity known as Soros died last October, November. Will he have people operating on his behalf, part of the team? Absolutely. Will they march into Washington and overthrow Trump? No. Absolutely no. What do you know of the Trump tweet, Nibiru beat, we got him? That was quickly censored off the Twitter. Apparently, I don't know nothing about it. I don't think it's anything to do with the alleged planet that's going to crash into us all, and only the ones that are in underground bunkers will survive, which is idiotic in itself. It may be a description of something else that's going on that may become clear in the coming days or weeks. Did Zionists create Islam to kill off Christians? No. The Vatican did. The Vatican is responsible for most, if not all, the religions on this planet. Whilst the Vatican created Protestantism, I can explain that in the show. It was never a religion. It's in the name. Protestant. Catholics protesting against the Catholic Church for fraud and corruption in the 1500s. As for the rest, they're just bastardized versions of the original, and a corruption of the real scriptures, all designed to divide and conquer the people. That was the original divide and conquer. Then came countries. If ET is so smart with all the tech, why did they live in the mountain or within the earth? Mountains are portals. That's why. Is the G described in the show the same G used in the centre of the Masonic symbol? Not as I understand it. I think there's I don't know the correct answer, but I don't think it's anything to do with that. Has the internet become a sentient organism? No, it cannot become sentient despite what they try and tell you. It's not possible. Just not possible. In your opinion, before I sleep, should I go in with an intention, or is it better to trust yourself enough that after all this practice, this is more a natural experience? I think you could have worded that a bit better, John. If it's something that you're needing to know or experience, then you should set an intention. You may not always get the answers, but you have a better chance. Sometimes things come to you when you need it, not when you want it, when you need it. So you have to be careful about pushing things, because it mightn't be your time to learn that particular knowledge or have that particular experience. That gets into the soul level. Is Earth our hell? Well, it all depends on perspective. To the Africans who are in famine and war, then yes. If Americans or Brits or Europeans think it's hell, then they are lacking perspective. If you're living in a third world country and having your children stolen, or you're being bombed from 30,000 feet, that's decimating your village. That's hell. It's all about perspective. I've covered that. I've covered that one. If a majority of people are soulless, or they are operated by an AI system, would it be possible for living souls to inhabit their bodies as a form of walking without breaking cosmic laws regarding possession, as they are technically vacant bodies? I think you need to have a look at that question. I appreciate the question. I'm not making fun of it, but you really need to think on that question. Why would you want to inhabit a synthetic? That, in essence, is exactly what they want you to do. And this is what is a good example, and I thank the questioner for putting it forward, of why we have to be careful in our decision making and how we are thinking and how we are acting. Because they will carry on playing tricks from further afield. The tricks that have been played out on the surface are nearing an end, but they still will play from afar. Now, once we get humanity up to a certain level with full knowledge of what's gone on, then the chances of them continuing that will diminish to a point where they're considered irrelevant. It's a bit like the cabal. Their control structures are all collapsed or collapsing. Their corporations are going bankrupt. Their banks are going bankrupt. Their forms of influence are diminishing by the day. Their numbers are diminishing by the day. And their own people that they were paying and considered slaves are now turning against them in record numbers, because people like myself and the people that support this show are educating them one by one. And eventually it reaches a tipping point, the fulcrum. Fulcrum is a balancing mechanism. We prop up their system. We are the support mechanism for their system. We take our support away, their system collapses. Well, what we're doing is we're taking their support away. So, like the example of the pyramid, and the people are the foundation of the pyramid. What has been removed is the top layers, and it's coming down very, very quickly. So all that be left is the foundation, which is us. No more Draco, no more Aldazani, Greys, bug-eyed bastards, hybrids, AIs, soulless entities, archons, vampirics. Just us. And that is what's taken place. What do I think of Gaudi and Shafet? I think I know Gaudi, but I don't know the other guy's name. I don't know too much about either of them, because I tend to give most of politics a miss, because when you're seeing what's going on a macro, they are more micro, and it's about a balancing act. So I don't study everyone. The doctor, I don't recall his name, the one that talks about law, is Dr. Nadu, scripturallaw.org. You want to go to his website. What the hell is going on with the foundation? Well, I've answered this question multiple times. Not just a question, I've offered the information multiple times. The funds are there. The funds can't be accessed until the platform is clear and safe to do so. Once certain elements, big hitting elements I might add, are removed from the equation to allow those funds to be delivered, then the foundation will open. Are we any closer to a full natural universe? Yes we are. I don't have an actual figure, but if people keep seeing glitches, then we're getting real close. Now, one more maybe before I go into the Aldazani. We know about the New Republic, or Republique, is a Rothschild's creation. We've been hearing a lot about General Joseph Dunford. Where does he fit into this scenario? Does he work for the Rothschilds or the American people? I'm kind of even sure whether Mr. Dunford even exists. You know, he's being put forward for coming to save America like a one-man Neo for the last 4 years on the internet, and where's he gone with it? So Dunford appears to me to be a figment of the agency bullshittery that they post on the internet, that something's going to take place like RVs, which, for those who are unfamiliar with that term, it's revaluation of currency. For those who are familiar, it actually stands for regurgitated vomit, because that's basically what it is. It will never take place, and it's not going to. So we're not having Republic of Rothschilds, Republic of China, Republic of France. We're going to have a Republic of America, period. Not Republic of USA Inc. either. This is what's been thrashed out over the last couple of months. It's not an easy task, and patience is required. We need the right decisions. If it takes the rest of the year and we get what we want, then great, rather than rushing into things, appeasing certain factions that can come back and bite. They're being dealt with. So if Mr. Dunford was so effing important, then he would have been in Trump's team, would he not? Right, let's go all the way back up. Who were the Th&I and the Abraxas? Right, here goes. The Th&I were humanoid, and potentially the original human template. Now, it's also a possibility that they were part of the Dragon humanoid group. Now, humanoid is the most common template throughout the universe. There are variants of it because of the genetic skullduggery, chimeras, and certain groups playing games, including humans, I might add. Like I said, the Th&I are humans, humanoid, and perhaps the worst that was ever created. But the Th&I created the Abraxas and also the Draco, and they were put into the original Earth, Tara, for their upbringing on this planet. This was before the Tiamat destruction, well before. The Draco and the Abraxas were helped off of here to escape the abuse and the tyranny of the Mashiali, which is an altruistic grey race. They gave them technology. This has been a common theme. This is what happened with the Procyon, the Pleiadians, who were supposed to be guardians of this planet and sold themselves out, sold us out for tech. And you wonder why I keep warning of tech. I'll keep repeating that because it's vital for us going forward. So the Mashiali, the grey race, gave them space travel and weapons way beyond their merit or development at the time. And as soon as the Draco and Abraxas had mastered space travel and warfare, which is what technology tends to lead to, they killed off the Mashiali. Now, both were both upbringing species experienced the worst abuse during their upbringing than we did, or we have. So the abuse of the Draco and the Abraxans was far worse than what we've experienced. The Draco were expected to turn out alright, whilst most beings expected the Abraxas to be very dark. In actuality, though, the Abraxas did turn out to be much worse than the Draco in terms of soul harvesting. That's that Lucian again. For those of you who watched the Jupiter Ascending movie, where it opens with a scene in which a whole planet species are harvested to be made into life-extending elixir of youth. That is what took place. That's what the Abraxans were doing. The Abraxas are the humanoid of the Anunnaki, and the real term for that is Nanunnaki. There are 5 races of that make up the group known as the Anunnaki, and to them, obviously in the Sumerian text, it tells you about the gold, how they were mining gold, which they were, but the real gold was our soul energy, because it was higher than everybody else's. The cream of the universe, and that was to be harvested all at once upon a planet species ripening to full population. This is why the minute we get to a certain level, people start talking about harvests. Of course, Mr. Wilcock and his Lord of One bullshit mentions that heavily. Harvesting is the devouring of the species' souls on a mass scale, and it's happened a number of times on this planet, and not just to us either. As we have developed, where we are come to the age where we have the ability to get rid of the Abraxas in terms of technology and soul will, and remove them, that's when interference takes place, and we go back to oblivion again, Stone Age, and so you repeat the loop. Now, the Abraxas had the ability, as most of the space travel, if not all of the space travel beings, have the ability to hollow out planets, and they acquired a mini galaxy we know as Nibiru. Both Draco and the Abraxas had a habit of acquiring technology, either stolen or from war with other technological species. The difference being that the Draco largely did it within the guidelines. They pushed right to the edge of cosmic law, but didn't break it. At the negotiation tables, they bent the rules, but those who had not bent the rules when it come to interfering with a planet species. Now, the Abraxas methods went way beyond even being at the negotiation tables. They preferred, once they acquired the Nibiru mini-galaxy, to cut a swathe of death and destruction of all planets they harvest along Nibiru's elliptical path. This is why the ancients feared this planet arriving, Nibiru. It wasn't in an orbit, it was being driven. Rest assured, it's not coming back, no matter how many clowns on the internet keep repeating it. Now, the question does raise, and it largely can't be answered, but this is as far back as we kind of went with it. A lot of this knowledge is Chloe's, by the way. I have to give credit where credit's due. It's not all mine, it's mainly Chloe's. About who created the genetic blueprint for the Draco and the Abraxas, also the Aldazani, the original and the worst form of human. We are currently in our 6th or 7th version of human. Perhaps we should change our name as a species, given how much damage and bad has been done in this area of creation by a being who looks just like us. This is why I've said in the past, Draco are not the worst elements. They've been abused badly also. Most of the souls, human souls that are here now, came here to Earth long after the Abraxan and the Draco were here. Obviously the Draco came back as the saviours because we asked for it. But our souls in the main came from other planets' destruction around the time of Tiamat. We ourselves, this human, does not have the Aldazani as the creators of our genetic human body vessels. Like I said, humanoid is a relatively common template in this universe, and many beings are of a humanoid nature, i.e. 2 head, 2 arms, 2 legs, symmetrical features. The return of the DNA to our genetics in this current version of human is indicative of this version of human now having the chance to rise above the long-standing behaviour, both in the overall abuse cycle that has existed here for some time, and a choice to rise above being a victim or becoming an abuser. This is what's going to take place with the restoration of the G primary matter. Now at the centre, the fulcrum point between the saviour-martyr polarity is accountability. Understanding a balance must be made between what we can control, where our energy goes willingly. Is it to be being made a victim, or is it going to be the one, Aka, the saviour? Or does it facilitate an in-between? Trinary thinking, not binary. And so that's kind of where we're at. That's what Humanity Unplugged last week was all about. A triumph of this particular species over impossible odds. It also showed the depth of the lies, not only on this planet and the various levels of this planet, but also universal wide. It's been extraordinary. But ultimately humanity has rose above it, and ultimately we have a chance to create a life in our image and in our likeness, not theirs. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope I answered all your questions the way you wanted them answered. But if you lead life in love and care, you will prevail. If you lead life in fear and anger, you will fail. Feel free for you to be the person you wish to be, not the person who conforms to what others want them to be. You are a multi-dimensional being operating simultaneously on many levels. You are not here to conform. You are not here to be stifled. You are not here to be enslaved. You are not here to be abused or to compete with your friends, family, or neighbours. You are here to be the best you can be and do so as the crown of creation. Now go out with the confidence of who and what you are and excel in yourself, and in doing so inspire others. Let's end with a little bit of Bon Jovi. We're living on a prayer, but those prayers are about to be answered. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.